rehabilitation programs, and I never really understood why I kept going back, and so I started noticing the people that were locked up that seemed like they weren't locked up so much, that they were like kind of free amongst, incarcerated people, and started asking questions. Many of them were Buddhists, many of them were Muslims that had very strong prayer practices, many of them were Christians who had very strong prayer and meditation practices. And I was like, boy, I better start trying this stuff, and so I did some Buddhist meditation in jail. I was lucky enough to be in a program during my last little stint, my last 8 months or so. But nothing ever really fully clicked for me, quite honestly. And so at a 12-step meeting one night, I just heard a guy talking, and I just really I was like, oh my gosh, that guy makes sense to me. And part of his practice was the exact same practice that we're talking about. And he was a longtime meditator, and he didn't ever force me to do his type of meditation. He just strongly recommended it, and said, this is what's worked for me. And that is, I do really well with people that don't force their will on me, and say that this is the only way, I get real, I can get real, kind of, I will recoil from, being forced to do anything. And I didn't really have a lot of options left. So when he said, this is what I do, and asked me to at least investigate through an orientation, I said, sure. And that's, been the last 20 plus years of my continuous recovery, so I've been abstinent for 22, almost 23 years. And at about a year and a half, I learned how to meditate from a teacher who had learned from a teacher who had learned from a teacher, and so on and so forth. And it has been something that, over the years has been something, even when my practice isn't as strong as I feel it should be, I always have the tool to go back to, no matter what circumstance I'm in. And I will say that after I learned, I was actually locked up one more time for an old warrant. And I understood what those men that I'd spent time with in jails before did, in terms of where they went, because I had a practice to turn to. And I got to leave my physical realm and go into something and tap into something greater around me. And again, I don't like to get too airy about it, but the fact of the matter is, I did not feel like I was locked up. I felt like I was as free as any man on the planet at that very moment. And so that experience stuck with me, and, and it's something that carries me through, quite honestly, because I can always take a breath and go back to that and say, where have I always found my guidance, and so that is the place.
Those of you who don't know much about what he's talking about, you'll see behind me, there's an image of the book, Vedic Meditation Stories. And those of you who are purely listening, it is an ebook right now, Vedic Meditation Stories. And the book is the only resource globally of true stories from individuals who learnt this practice in their own words. The majority of them are actually from underrepresented groups. And part of the mission statement of Aware Meditation is going to those underrepresented groups in the wellness community and going in the communities to bring large teachings of people over a weekend. So anyone can get that. If you have right now unlimited, I think it's Prime, you get unlimited Kindle or a book a month, you can actually watch it for free or read it for free. And it has a little synopsis about what the meditation is, a little bit about aware meditation, but the stories of people in their own voices. And they will go from PhD people to individuals who had a very dramatic story like Kevin. And we encourage everyone to check that out. The link is in the description, and that will be updated if the resource is somewhere else. And this is a great opportunity for you to read the truth. And exactly as Kevin said, no one's pushing anyone to have to do anything. You simply investigate it. And you've always got our email there if you happen to want to find someone near you that can teach that as well. So you've done this for 20 plus years. That's quite phenomenal. Have you done anything that long in your life?
No, I've actually I can't think of anything. Maybe play drums, but you know, that has had you know, some long lapses. So yeah, I didn't even use and drink that long, you know, when I was doing that. So I think the only other thing is that I've been continuously sober, but that is not necessarily there's actions that lead to that versus it being an actual action, right? So no, I can't think of anything. I was just commenting about like waking up really early in the morning and having, you know, time to myself when there's no activity in the house, and how nice that is. Because I read a story once about Sonny Berger from the Hells Angels, and that at San Quentin, when he had learned how to do meditation, that it was that twice a day for 20 minutes was the only time the cell block was quiet. Because Sonny was doing his meditation. So, you know, I'm like, I wish I had 20 minutes twice a day that was actually quiet in my house. But if I get up early, I do, you know, so there you go.
Well, it's also the response to what's happening outside. So part of what happens with meditation practice that goes on regularly through one's life, the fight or flight response. And if you have been locked up, then the fight or flight response is going to be a little bit dialed up when you come out, and quite rightly so. That when that diminishes, then even if there are lots of noises going on, there is not the kick jolt within to start wondering what's happening. And then the mind starts saying, I can't meditate, it's no good. And I talk about this, it's systemic meditationism. That part of what I do is break down people's idea of what they think meditation is and who they think they have to be in order to do it. You know, the word comes from the Latin monks, and that was for them to concentrate. But it was around before the 13th century.
Oh, for sure.
You know that it's not always that same focusing element. And there's basically two branches of it, concentration and non-directive. And Kevin does a non-directive practice that he stuck to. I couldn't stick to anything that long, but the meditation has helped.
Well, now it's interesting too that you mentioned that, because when I was living in the Sunset District of San Francisco and working downtown, I did not drive because it was too expensive. So I took the train in every morning and found peace on the train, both directions, through meditation practice that is not the non-concentration version of meditation. And so you can do it anywhere, really. And, you know, again, this isn't a sales pitch for anything. This is simply what's worked for you know, for me, you know, over the years, and I've been lucky to have it, quite honestly. And you know, it's for people that think that you need a certain, you know, you have to have, you know, a certain room or any of that other stuff, that is just categorically false.